Sure, just for a couple minutes. Hi, my name is Amy Turner. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Special Education here in Wallingford. Hello, I'll keep those of you here. So today is our first PTAC meeting of the school year. We're going to have them every other month, and we will have those dates on the calendar. The purpose of the Special Education PTAC is to get parents together to really for information, for some learning, and just to speak with each other and talk about strategies and supports that you have for each other. And it provides us an opportunity to share any information that we have about our special education department, so we're excited to see everybody here. In April, we have a huge special education resource fair where we invite companies from across the state to come out and just share their resources, their services. It's always a huge hit every year, and we're excited to have it again this year. We have it every other year, so this is the year that we're going to have it, and that's April 6th, I believe. Right. Yeah? Wow, nice memory. So, without further ado, we have Chris Brown here with us today. So Chris is a psychologist. He was a director for several years and is well known in children and behavior, and he's here to help support us with strategies on how we can support our children at home. So I'm going to leave it up to Chris. If you have questions, just raise your hand or put something in the chat, and we will ask Chris questions as he goes. He's going to take them as he presents. So let us know if you have any questions.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Just for the people on the live stream, can you hear me okay at this volume? If you just want to give a thumbs up if you can hear me.
They can.
All right. Okay. All right. So welcome for those of you here in person. What I am going to speak with you about this evening is two things broadly. One is to start out with a general understanding of emotions and the purpose they serve for children and for adults, for people of any age. And then we'll talk about how to help manage emotions, and particularly when emotions get out of control. So that'll be the focus of what we talk about tonight. Okay. If you have questions, just ask while I'm going. I'll take. We don't have to wait until the end for questions. Okay. All right. All right. So to get started, first we'll just begin broadly with emotions. So emotions are these experiences that everyone has. In fact, we wouldn't really be able to manage in the world if we didn't experience emotions. And the emotions that we experience broadly can go from being very calm and serene and feeling, we would say, even or without much excitement. And then we can also have emotions that are quite stormy, where things feel chaotic or very heightened, would be some of the words we use, or out of control. And everyone at different points in their life, at different points in their week, or depending on the day, at different points in their day, can be feeling serene and calm, and then other points quite chaotic or tumultuous, depending on what's happening. The important thing to understand about emotions is the emotions that we experience are always helpful from the viewpoint that our emotions are providing us with information. They're providing us with information about what we see happening in the world around us. And what we do is we use our emotions to quickly get a sense of what's happening here. So if we're in a situation and we feel calm, then that's giving us a signal or an understanding that we're in a place that's safe, we're in a place where we don't really have to worry about too much. And if we're in a situation and we're getting emotions that things are, where we're getting the signal that we're feeling agitated or on edge or uneasy, that's giving us a signal that something might not be good for us here. And we have to attend to it to make sure that we're okay. So in the broadest sense, emotions help us to understand, are we safe or are we not safe? Or am I okay here or am I not okay? And that's a really important signal to get. And it's important that we get that signal quickly. So that's this general bit of information. The other thing is that the emotions we experience are tied into not only what's happening in the current moment where we are, but we're comparing the current moment to past history or our memories, and we're using our past experiences to influence the emotion that we experience right now. Right? So here we are, like we're in a classroom setting. So some of us had some times in school where it was a little bit anxiety-provoking or make us nervous. So being present like this could have a little bit of uneasiness because it's like being in school. Or if you're on the Zoom or the Google Meet, you could be feeling a bit uneasy because it's a school setting on a Google Meet, which makes us think back to the pandemic, and that was no fun. So there could be a little uneasiness that we experience with our emotions because of that, until we get rolling and we realize there's not going to be any tests or quizzes here, so it's safe. And on the Google Meet, we realize, it's not a pandemic. This is just a talk that we're here together for by choice, not by pandemic, and so that eases the emotional state as well. So emotions can shift as we get more information. For our children, young people, they are also experiencing the same kind of thing with emotions. It's giving them information. And to just have a bit of a better understanding of emotions, emotions are composed of two main pieces. One piece of emotions is the energy level. So right now, our energy level for all of us is rather low. This is a calm, quiet setting. We're not exercising or anything like that. We're not watching a football game, so there's not a whole lot of excitement. So the energy level is quite low. But for an emotional experience, the energy level can go from really dim to really bright, or low energy to very high energy. So that's one key piece. And the other key piece of an emotional experience is how pleasant is it? So we can have an emotional experience that's quite pleasant, where it's a wonderful, joyous occasion, or we can have an emotional experience that's quite unpleasant, where there's grief or sadness. And so emotions move on both of those continuums or both of those factors. So as we talk about handling stormy emotions for children, when we're talking about that, we're going to talk about our children, young people, having emotions with high energy, because they're in a stormy situation, there's a lot of energy brewing, and generally unpleasant. So that's what we're going to be discussing when we get there. And the goal is to move, to help our children move from being high energy and unpleasant to neutral energy and neutral level of pleasantness. And that'll be the goal. But we need to have an understanding of, so how far can we move in either direction? Okay, so that's the key piece of emotions. If you think about it, what would be an emotional experience with high energy and high pleasantness? What's a word we would use to describe that? Manic. Manic, perhaps. Manic. What else? Excitement. Yeah. Jubilation, joy. Right. That would be high energy and quite pleasant. Enthusiasm would be a little bit lower energy, but that would be a good word to describe it. And what would be something that would be high energy and unpleasant? What might be a word we would use for it? A tantrum would definitely be high energy and unpleasant. Right? I've never experienced a pleasant tantrum. Either I can recall tantrums when I was 4 years old that I provided to my family, and I've diffused tantrums, and it's never pleasant. What would be low energy and unpleasant? Yeah, depression, sadness, grief, something like that. Okay. Interestingly, anxiety is unpleasant and somewhat high energy, because there's a sense of agitation when we're worried or anxious. We want to figure something out. We don't know what's going to happen. And so there creates a bit of heightened awareness of things with anxiety or worry. Okay. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. There we go. Now, one thing that we know for sure is it can be difficult to understand our emotions. It can be difficult for us as adults to understand our emotions, and particularly can be challenging for young people to understand how they're feeling. And in the teenage years, emotions move pretty quickly for teenagers, so they can have a tough time. But if we think about it, if you were to casually meet a friend somewhere and they said, "How are you doing?" or if someone says, "How are you feeling?" we typically say fine or pretty good, but we don't really stop and think about how we're feeling before we respond. On the other side of it, if we do stop and think and we offer someone a clear emotion word, like I'm feeling enthusiastic or I'm feeling a sense of despair, sometimes the person who's listening won't know what to do with that, right? Because that is not something we normally do. So in our typical day, we very rarely will have a discussion with someone about what our true actual emotional state is. In fact, we very rarely check in with ourselves to consider, what's my real actual emotional state right now? And since we don't do that as adults, we don't talk with children about how they're actually feeling moment to moment. And so that's why it's somewhat difficult to know how we're feeling. Particularly for children who have a range of emotions that get high energy, it can be quite confusing for them. And when it comes to stormy emotions, in the work that I do, I've had the opportunity to work with children from preschool through high school. And so in the younger elementary grades, children can have really intense emotions. You're throwing tantrums, for example. We don't really see high school students throw tantrums. They maybe use foul language or yell loudly, but they're not rolling around on the floor and kicking and screaming. But what I had done when I started working in high school, I would ask the high school students if they remember having tantrums when they were young. And one of the things that they all said, this was all with boys, by the way, not with girls. One of the things all these boys said was that they didn't know exactly how they were feeling and that they felt out of control. And with that, they knew they felt unpleasant, but they didn't know how to describe it with an actual word. And so they could have been feeling sad or angry or frustrated or scared, afraid. It could have been anything, any of those unpleasant emotions. They didn't know which it was, and they didn't know what to do with it, and they just felt out of control, and then it came out in this behavior. For us as adults or for older teenagers, it can be similar when there's this general sense of unpleasantness, and which creates a sense of tension, and then something has to be done with the tension that we feel. And that's where the stormy behaviors come out, which leads us to say there's a stormy emotion. Right? Yes, Liz.
So going back to the early childhood years, if we work with kids in naming those feelings, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's, you're feeling anxious or whatever. But when they're in that state, can they access that ability developmentally?
So when we're in the storm, that's a challenging time to accurately label an emotion. So what I'm going to talk about with you tonight is helping children of any age to label their emotions before the storm occurs. Because if and when young people become good at labeling their emotions when there's not a storm going on, they will have a better likelihood of being able to label it in a storm. But they need a lot of practice outside of the storm to be able to get pretty good at it. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking on the developmental continuum.
Yeah. For anyone, so when I deal with a high school student, a 16-year-old, who is really angry and using foul language and walking in circles around my office, that's not a time where I could say, okay, let's label this. They're not gonna be able to do it. Okay. All right. So one of the things that we'll talk about now is, so how do we get better at understanding emotions? So one of the key things is starting to label emotions, so to identify emotions. And we can model that for our children. One of the things that human beings tend to do is we expect that the people in our lives are going to be able to figure out how we're feeling without us telling them. And if they're not tuned into how we're feeling without us telling them, sometimes we get irritated that they don't know how we're feeling. We want them to be able to figure it out. And people are pretty good mind readers, but sometimes we as human beings also get really skilled at masking our emotions, right? Which is important to do in some situations. So for example, if I'm irritated with my boss, I need to mask that because it's not good for me for my boss to think that I'm mad at him, right? That's not going to be good for me. So in order for me to survive in my career, I have to mask that, right? We get so good at it that we can even mask our emotions with our children and with family members. And so that can be confusing to children, obviously, right? So what I recommend is that as parents or adults and caregivers in a capacity, that when we're talking to children, we let them know how we're feeling so that they hear us label our emotion. It serves two purposes. One, they realize, oh, it's okay for me to say to someone else how I'm feeling. This is what my mom or dad does. This is what my teacher does. And so since they do it, I can do it too. And that's how children operate. They model what they see the adults doing. And the other piece of it is we start to help children to understand what are some words we can use to label our emotions by us using the words with the children. So an example that I have on the screen here is a parent saying to a child, when you help me clean up your toys, I feel happy. Or I'm happy that you're helping me to clean up your toys. And then usually there's a smile that goes with that. So there's our body posture, our facial expression, but also the accurate use of the word. And then we could start labeling the child's emotions. I can see that when Grandma comes over, what did I put here? You get excited to see her. So when Grandma's coming to visit, I know you're excited because, that's the next slide. Then we could start putting the context into it. So first we label the emotion, then we explain why the emotion is happening. So we could add to the first one, when you help me clean up your toys, I feel happy because it's easier when we do it together. Or I feel happy because you're such a good helper. I love seeing you being able to help. That makes me happy. And so there's a label and an explanation. Then the other one is when Grandma comes over, you are excited to see her because she colors with you. So give a label and the reason behind it. Right? So that is a way to help children to start to understand their own emotions, other people's emotions, so that they can have some accurate understanding. And the reason for that is in order to tame our emotions or to regulate them, we have to be able to accurately name them. And so this easy to remember phrase is we have to name it to tame it when it comes to emotions. And by taming emotions means regulating them or going from very high energy, unpleasant emotion to lower energy and more pleasant emotions. Like we tame a wild tiger or lion. I guess we tame lions. Right? We tame a wild lion. So we can go from a stormy situation to a calm situation. And that's the goal. So the first step to be able to handle stormy emotions is to be able to accurately understand the role emotions play and being able to name them accurately and understand where they come from. Okay? So that's a prevention piece to do it. The next thing that we want to be able to do is when there are stormy emotions, what we really want is our children to be able to soothe themselves, calm themselves down. So with children, toddlers, particularly with toddlers, we'll use the word soothing, and even infants, right? So you remember when your children were infants, there was a lot of soothing going on. Usually involved, for me, it involved doing a lot of this, walking around the house at 2 a.m, trying to get one of my sons to go to sleep, rubbing their back. There were certain songs that we would play that would soothe the savage beasts of my older son. It's funny now because when the songs come on, my wife and I immediately remember, oh, that's the soothing song. My son is 26 now. He has no recollection of the song. We thought it would be implanted in him. And he's like, I don't know that song. I don't remember it. And for us, it's the soothing song. So my wife and I immediately calm down when we hear it. But it doesn't impact my son. To soothe stormy emotions, one of the things that we need to do is when we are feeling a stormy emotion, when we have a high energy, unpleasant emotion like frustration or irritation, we want to be careful to not be out of control or chaotic in that. So the example here is modeling, for example, this is a mess that I didn't expect, but I can clean it up. Okay. I feel frustrated or I feel irritated because I have to get ready to leave, but it will be okay, I can clean it up. And so we can model a statement like that or an interaction like that with our children so that our children can see if they get frustrated or irritated, there's a way to handle it. Right? So that's somewhat simplistic, but it's important for children to see that there's a way to be frustrated or heightened or feeling some higher energy, but not turn that into being out of control. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, all right. All right. With children, what we want to do is we want to, and I say children and young people of all ages, we want to provide comfort when they're experiencing stormy emotions, or even when stormy emotions start to seem like they're on the horizon. So one thing that's really important is experiencing an emotion that's unpleasant is not the same thing as a misbehavior. So for example, I can be angry or I can be frustrated or irritated, but I don't necessarily also at the same time have to be engaging in a bad behavior or a misbehavior. And sometimes we send messages to children that if they're experiencing an unpleasant emotion, that's bad. So for example, an example would be if a child is sad, we would say something like, which sends the message that it's bad, it's misbehavior. Why are you sad? That's nothing to be sad about. Snap out of it, stop being sad. Or what are you so mad about? That's nothing to be mad about. This is something to be mad about, and give some other example. What you're mad about doesn't mean anything. That is really confusing to children, and it makes them think that experiencing the emotion is something that is considered a misbehavior and could result in a punishment or a consequence. And we don't want that to happen for children. And here's why. If a child is displaying an unpleasant emotion without misbehavior, they're trying to send us a signal. They're trying to communicate to us that they have a problem. And the reason they want to give us that signal is because they want us as the adults to provide comfort. So if they send us this signal and we don't respond with comfort, if we respond by saying, nope, don't feel that way, or that's the wrong emotion, or that's misbehavior, it doesn't make the emotion go away. They're still experiencing the emotion. And the only thing they have left to do is to behave in a bigger way, to be louder or to be more out of control, to get some kind of care or comfort. They have to do something that can't be ignored. And that moves children into where an unpleasant emotion starts to bring on a misbehavior. So we have to be careful to not move in that direction. So that sounds pretty simple, but it's not. Right? It's not simple. And the reason it's not simple is what we have a tendency to do is, if our child has had some tantrums or has had some stormy behaviors, sometimes we have a pretty clear understanding, if he's getting mad, that could end up in a stormy behavior. So we take this is a reasonable idea where we will say to a child, you're not mad, or that's nothing to be mad about, because we want to prevent the child going from feeling mad to having a stormy behavior. So we try to end the emotional experience. But we can't do that for another person. We can't end an emotional experience by saying, stop the emotional experience. We can help end an emotional experience by providing comfort in some way to try to ease the intensity of it. But what we inadvertently do by trying to cut off the emotion that might lead to the stormy behavior is we cut off the communication, and then the child feels like, I got to communicate this some way, and so they have an explosion to communicate it. So it's well-meaning, but it creates this problematic cycle. Okay? Have you ever been in a situation where you're frustrated and irritated, and someone says, calm down, calm down? When people say that to me, my first response is, I am calm. So telling me to calm down doesn't stop the irritation or frustration. What maybe would stop the irritation or frustration would be, I can tell you're getting irritated. Is there something I can do to help? Which is not the same as stop the emotion. It's actually comforting. So now the person is not trying to stop my emotional experience. The person is saying, I can tell you need help. What can I do to help you? It's a completely different message, right? It's kind of the same for children. No one likes hearing calm down when we want help. What we want is help. Right? So to go along with this, and the first a key step here is to assure the child that she or he is not in trouble. One of the things with youngsters is they don't like to be in trouble. I've never talked to a child who said, I love getting in trouble. I wake up in the morning and think, how can I get in more trouble today than I got into yesterday? So if they sense that the adult is starting to move towards the idea of you're misbehaving or I'm misbehaving as the child, I'm going to try to get away from that situation. I'm going to get more heightened, more energized, and more unpleasant. So one of the key things to do when a child maybe has misbehaved because of a heightened emotion is to send the message clearly, you are not in trouble. I know this doesn't seem good right now, but I'm here to help you. You're not going to be punished. You're not in trouble. We're going to help you. We're going to take care of this. It goes a long way to bringing the energy level down and moving away from unpleasant and more towards pleasant. Slowly, because it's heightened, but it starts moving in the right direction. Whereas if we see a child who's in a stormy situation and say, it's hard for me to do because I don't do this very regularly, but saying something like, that's it, now you're in so much trouble, you're not leaving the house for a month. That's not really going to bring the storm down. Right? It's going to keep it where it is or elevate it. Right? We probably don't say that too often, but that's the best example I could come up with. Okay. Another thing is we have to be careful when a child is having a stormy emotion. It's natural for us to get elevated as well. Right? Of course, we're humans, right? And so in that situation, it's unsettling, and so we start to get heightened. We have to be careful not to put our emotions onto the child, where then it becomes too stormy coming together. We need to really try to understand the child's perspective. So if a child is sad, and it's really nothing to be sad about, we still have to try to understand, well, if I was 5 years old, I'd probably be sad too, and try to recognize it through that lens. The hard thing for us as adults is we've got a lot of things to do. So sometimes we don't have time to be sad with the child. And we don't have time for the child to be sad. So we try to move them through it. And sometimes sometimes we have to be patient and acknowledge the sadness, not our frustration with we're running out of time here, and putting that onto the child. Okay. Questions about any of this so far? Okay. Any questions from the live stream? Okay. So an example of being comforting is to say something like in this example with this little boy here. I can see you're sad because your toy is broken. I can help you. I am sorry that you are sad. Something like that. Rather than saying, you broke another toy. How many toys are you going to break? How many times do I have to tell you, stop breaking your toys? What's the matter with you? Why don't you ever listen? Your brother doesn't break his toys. Why can't you be more like your brother? That's gonna heighten any kind of storm, because that sounds like you're in trouble. I'm not going to help you. And from the child's perspective, he really liked this toy, and now it's broken. And it's reasonable, very reasonable to be sad. Even though he wasn't careful and broke it, he can still be sad that he's broken it. So we want to make sure that we approach it like the left side rather than the right side. Right? So that can be helpful. Also not easy to do. Children can be frustrating and irritating. So this is, what I'm describing for you, I would suggest we try to do things like the left side of the screen 70% of the time, 60% of the time. No parent can do the left side of the screen 100% of the time. Maybe there's some parent who could, but it's be very rare. And if you're listening to this and you find that you're on the right side of the screen most of the time, then I would say start with the goal of moving to the left side of the screen 30% of the time, right? Just for starters. It takes a lot of effort and energy to manage our frustration and irritation, particularly when we're in a rush or when there are lots of things to do in the house, lots of things to do for work, other family members to care for or take care of. We have a lot on our plates as adults, and so it takes a lot of effort to try to keep our emotions in check to help manage the child's emotions. Okay. All right. A couple of quick things to calm stormy emotions. And some of these are obvious, so I'll go through these quickly. Of course, if you have questions, ask. First thing is to use a calm voice. And I would even suggest practicing using a calm voice in a heightened situation by looking in the mirror and practicing staying calm. Because it's not necessarily easy to do. It can be harder to do if we were raised in a family where our parents didn't maintain calm voices, because that's what we learn from, right? My dad was a really high-quality yeller. He probably could have won awards. He was a basketball coach and a father. And so he was really good at yelling at players and referees. And sometimes he was good at home too. I noticed when I became a dad that I had to work really hard at not yelling, because I knew I didn't like it as a kid. I'm a psychologist, so I kind of figured out, my kids probably won't like it if I yell at them, because it was a brilliant insight I had. So I yelled a few times and realized, this is not good, and so I had to practice not yelling. It actually wasn't that hard. It was actually better, but it was a learned skill because I had learned a different skill, right? So something that we have to be aware of. Another thing that's really important is to get on the same level as a child. So with a young child, if they're feeling stormy, we don't want to stand over them and try to provide some calming statements, because it seems like we have the power, or it can seem intimidating. So with a child, we want to get down on their level, so down on one knee or sit down. And then when my sons got bigger than me, when they were feeling stormy, I would tell them to sit down next to me so that we were on the same level. Because I didn't so I'm not very tall. My sons are 6'1". I didn't like them standing over me, stormy.
Right.
Yes.
So, what about when, I kind of appreciate all what you say. I learned. But what about when you try and talk? Like, I try and talk to my son, and I know he is in this mood and all this thing, but he don't want to say anything. I insist and I get to that point, like I get angry and I say, well, you just told me what's going on. Let me know.
Yes.
I want to help you,
Yep.
But it kind of did not work. So I approach it a different way. And sometimes it's hard to tell me, so what do you think we should do when we get like in my situation? What do you do?
So my suggestion is, what you're doing so far is exactly what to do. So making it clear you want to help. What can I do? Interesting thing about teenagers is when we offer the help, sometimes, frequently, they're not ready to accept it at that moment. And so the careful thing that we have to do is we have to realize, this is not the right time. So the thing I recommend is to say, I really want to be able to help you with this. I can tell you don't want to talk about it now. That's okay. I'd like to talk about it now, but since you don't want to, I can respect that. That's okay. I'll be ready to talk to you about it whenever you're ready. But I really think I can help you with this. And say, I'm going to go out to the other room. I'm going to take the dog for a walk. Maybe later today or tomorrow, you'll want to talk about this. Whenever it is, I'll be ready to help. And that takes a lot of patience to be able to do, for two reasons. One, we don't like to see our children upset, and we truly want to help them. The other thing is, as I said already, we are busy. So in this moment, you're thinking, I got some time now. I could talk to you about this. Later, I'm going to be at work, or I got to go help my uncle, or I got to go, whatever I have to do. And now's the time. But teenagers don't have the same timetable as us. I spent a lot of time working in alternative high schools. So those are kids who are pretty explosive. And so with years of doing that with a large number of young people, I realized that sending that message of, I want to talk to you, now isn't a good time, however I would say it, but I'll be available whenever you are, that they would always come around. Sometimes it'd be later that day, sometimes it'd be the next day, sometimes it might be 3 days later. But we have to be careful to say, well, if you don't want to talk about it, forget it, figure it out on your own. We want to be careful not to say that. Or, we could be sarcastic. Oh, well, I guess you don't want to talk about it. I guess you have all the answers. Well, so since you're so smart and you have all the answers, good luck figuring it out. I'm done. We want to be careful not to send that message too. And sometimes we'll do that with younger children as well. We want not to do that. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And some other comforting things. So holding hands, rubbing your child's back. With my 6-foot tall boys, rubbing their back still is pretty effective. It is comforting, and no matter what age you are. And making the clear message that you can help. With young children, which is what I have in the in the box here, we can, with young children when they're doing pretend play, we can model with them soothing their dolls or their other toys. So just like we soothe them, if they model soothing their dolls, they'll learn how to soothe themselves through that. The other thing is, as we model this behavior, children can start to talk themselves through to soothe themselves. And this is kind of interesting. I was in a school earlier this fall, or maybe it was last spring. I can't remember. But he was a 6-year-old, and he was doing some kind of work at his table in his classroom, and it was a little challenging. And I was not sitting right next to him, but I could hear him, and he was saying, "This is hard, but I can do it. This is hard, but I'll be able to do it. I'll be able to do it." And he got his pencil and he started working on it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it." So he was soothing himself, even though he felt a little bit agitated, right? And he was modeling his mom or his dad or his teacher saying, "I know this is hard, but you can do it." That's what we say to children. And then he was saying it to himself. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. It works. It works. Another thing we could do with young children is to have a comforting toy that they can grab onto and hold onto that will help them to soothe themselves. This toy is my older son's stuffed animal that he used to use when he was frustrated or irritated. So we could tell when he was really angry because he would walk out of the room, go down to his bedroom, grab his stuffed bear, and come walking back out with his bear and sit on the floor and pout. But at least he wasn't throwing things. He was with his beer and pouting. So he was learning to soothe himself. Okay. To prevent stormy emotions, we need to be tuned in and on the lookout for the signs that a storm might be coming. So as we get to know our children, we can start to see maybe a look on their face or their body posture. Maybe they mumble to themselves. One of my sons was a mumbler. That's when we knew he was getting irritated, when he started mumbling about things instead of talking clearly. But a lot of times there's a look on their face or the way they respond. Usually if they frequently, that's just as an example, again, this is with like late elementary to middle school to high school. If they usually talk in full sentences, when we ask them a question and now they're giving us one-word answers, that's a signal maybe that there's a storm coming, right, for some of our children. Some of you, maybe your kids did that. If they usually only talk in single words and suddenly they're giving us these long explanations, that could be an indicator that they're nervous or worried about something because they're going on, and usually they don't. So like, oh, something's different here, right? So if there's a little bit of a change in some way, that's a signal that the energy might be going up and moving towards unpleasant, perhaps. Okay. So our children give us signals. The other thing we can be aware of is there might be some common situations where our children tend to get heightened. And so if that's the case, like, I don't know, say like going to birthday parties, maybe is a situation that's hard for a child to maintain their energy level and their level of unpleasantness. So if that's the case, then we can prepare them before going to the party and say things like, I know sometimes when we go to a party, you get nervous, you feel too excited, and you are too energetic, and you end up bumping into someone or bumping into something, and then that becomes a problem. So let's think about what we can do differently when we go to the party today, something along those lines. Or when we go to your grandparents' house, I know you don't like being there, you don't like how the house smells and it bothers you, and your grandmother asks you 1,000 questions, so your grandmother cares about you. Let's think about what we can do so it doesn't turn into an unpleasant situation for you or for the rest of us. What's a plan that we can come up with and prepare knowing that there's likely to be a storm here, but maybe we can avoid it. Okay. And really, preventing the stormy emotions means we want to keep the energy level from getting too high, and we want to keep the pleasantness from dropping too low. Right? We want to keep things neutral as much as possible. Another thing that's really important to prevent too many storms is to have routines. A lot of times, the stormy emotions come out when we're rushing and we're in a hurry for things, and that leads to frustration or irritation, and that can become unmanageable. So one of the things with routines, it keeps energy levels neutral because we know what to expect. And when we know what to expect, we're generally calmer. I think that's, for people of any age, when we know what to expect, there's an easiness to that. And particularly for younger children, they find a great deal of comfort in knowing what's going to be happening. And they feel, some children with a little bit more difficult temperament, feel quite uneasy when they don't know what's going to happen next. So we want to try to do that. And the routines are good for us as adults because this bullet here, it reduces decision-making demands. It's hard to be an adult. Newsflash, we make thousands of decisions every day, literally thousands of decisions. Some are small, some are medium, and some are big. But it takes energy and effort to make decisions, and we want to make the right decision. When we have routines built in, decisions are automatically made. Routines create situations where we don't have to think too much. There's Steve Jobs, who was the president of Apple. One of the things Steve Jobs was known for is he always wore the same thing. And he said he wanted to take the decision-making of choosing what to wear out of his daily decision-making. Was one less thing to worry about or think about or be agitated about. And I know this is really important because I live with my wife. And when she gets dressed in the morning, some mornings there are so many decisions where she comes out and says, "What do you think of this? Does this match? Are these shoes okay? Do I look too sloppy? Is this all right?" And I want to say, just make a decision. But I don't, because I know that wouldn't be good. And I'll say, "Well, what do you think?" Which isn't really the answer. For me, it's much easier. For men, it's easier. I don't have too many options, and I just grab something with giving it no thought, except does it match, right? Much easier routine for me. And I'm not rushing in the morning, where she's frequently rushing because of that hard decision. So it reduces the time pressure. It's good for us, and it's good for our kids. It's good for our kids because they know what to expect. It's good for us because it takes something off of our plate so we can be more tuned in. Inevitably, storms are going to arrive. So when they do, a couple of key things that we need to do. Main things, we don't like to be told to calm down. However, in a situation where our children are in a stormy situation, the most important thing is for us to remain calm. One good reason for that is if we're remaining calm, some other adult who's present with us won't say to us, "Calm down," as we're trying to manage it, because we don't want to hear that. By saying calm, that means calm voice. So, as I've been talking tonight, this is a pretty calm voice. The other thing, which is really important, is a calm face. Have you heard the funny expression, "Did my face just say that?" Right? Children are really tuned in to our facial expressions to get signals about, are they in trouble? That's really what they're trying to figure out. So we could be using a calm voice but look really irritated, and that's not going to work. We have to maintain calm voice and neutral face. Again, something to practice while looking in the mirror. And then take calm actions. So like I said before, getting on the same level as a child or sitting down. If we sit down, that's a calm action to take. It's hard to be activated while we're sitting. So that will help us to make sure that we remain calm. It's also good to invite a child to sit down because it's hard for a child to remain really heightened energy-wise if they're sitting. I have a good friend who's a psychologist who used to work in juvenile prisons. And one of his jobs was if a fight started to break out, he would have to go in and try to calm down the young people from fighting, teenagers. It's not an easy job. One of the things he would do was tell people to sit down because as he said, you can't fight when you're sitting. So he would invite people to sit down, and oftentimes they did. And it's a simple strategy. So calm voice, calm face, calm action. Right? One of the things that you're not going to see on this list, as Liz had asked before, is on this list is not label the emotion accurately. Right? When we're in the storm, we want to reduce the likelihood of anything bad happening during the storm. To go along with that, we want to be sure that the child understands we're there to comfort them. We're not there to blame them. We're not there to punish them. We're only there to provide comfort. And we do that by saying things like, you are okay. I can help you. I can see you need some help. What can I do to help you? And very important, you are not in trouble. And sending that message clearly. If you tell them they're in trouble while they're in the storm, it's gonna make it more heightened, or it's gonna increase the energy level, because children don't want to be in trouble. And that's why a lot of times when children misbehave, they do it in a sneaky way, because they don't want to get caught. Right? It's obvious. No one wants to get caught. But if we say something when they're in a storm that makes it very clear, without question, that they're in big trouble, that's not going to calm the storm in any way. They can be in trouble after when they're calm, and we can deliver the consequences calmly. Right? It's not good to punish in a yelling voice or in a intimidating posture. It's good to say, okay, like half hour later, look, that did not go well when you got upset earlier, and you broke that window. So, we've got to figure out what to do. But, you're going to have to help take care of that, or whatever it might be. Or you punched your sister. You've got to apologize. We've got to figure out how you're going to do that. We don't hit in this house, so there's going to be a consequence for that. You can't play with your Switch for 2 days. But hitting just isn't going to be tolerated. It's better to do it in a calm voice after you've provided comfort than in the heat of the moment when the storm is raging. Right? And to that point, being forceful and powerful will not end the storm. Right? No matter how hard we grip onto the wheel, if in a storm, that's not going to stop the storm. We have to get through it as calmly and as safely as possible, and we want to focus on physical safety and also emotional safety. So that's where the calm voice and the calm action and calm body position comes into play. When we take that kind of approach during the storm, we can get through it and ride it out without any emotional injury or physical injury, which is something that's really important for all of us in those situations. And then keep in mind that no matter what it is, every storm will come to an end. Right? There's not a tantrum that is still going on that started years ago. Right? Every tantrum, every argument, every stormy situation comes to an end. Our goal is to do whatever we can to keep the storm from getting too out of control and to keep it from lasting too long. Right? So we want to reduce the time of it and reduce the intensity of it. Some storms just can't be avoided. We could do everything right, and people are emotional. And some people, their energy level is going to get really high, and the level of unpleasantness is going to get really low, and there's going to be a storm. And so that's going to happen from time to time. Once we get through it, it's important for us to stop and think as the adults, I think I tried everything, but is there something else maybe I missed? Is there something I could have done differently to help my child have avoided this stormy situation? Or once in it, is there something I could have done to get it to end sooner or to keep it from getting as intense as it did? It's always helpful after the fact, like hours after, to stop and think, is there something that we could have done or I could have done differently here? Interestingly, I think most adults do that. The parents I talk to when I'm helping them with their children frequently have these thoughts at 2 a.m. when they can't sleep because of what happened earlier in the day. Children, young people, do not really think about what they could have done differently. In fact, for a child, once the storm is over, particularly young children, 15 minutes later, it's like nothing happened. It's kind of interesting. It's nice for children, I guess. It's hard on us. But I do think we can help children if we wait a day or two to talk with them about the trouble that happened and talk with them about what could be done differently also. We have to start those conversations by saying, I want to talk to you about what happened. You are not in trouble. But I know that you didn't like what was happening during that, whatever situation was. And I want to see if there's something we can figure out so that you don't have to feel badly again like you did that day. And that's really important. We want to send the messages. We don't want to send a message that I as the adult felt badly, and I don't want you to make me feel bad. The focus has to be on the young person. I could tell that you didn't like what was happening. Let's see if we can figure out what we each could do differently so that you don't feel as bad again on another day, as a way to try to figure things out, to always make improvement, even after we get through a storm. And that's all I have for you tonight. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or questions from the live stream Google Meet. No? Everything's crystal clear? Okay. Well, thank you for your attention. Thank you on the screen, and thank you for coming in person. Okay. All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.